The year is 1927 and New York City is booming. Construction crews work high above the streets of Manhattan, balancing on steel beams as new skyscrapers rise into the sky. Down in the Bronx, trolley cars rattle past apartment blocks and neighborhood shops. The smell of cigar smoke drifts from open doorways. Street vendors shout to passing customers, and the city seems convinced that the good times will never end. It is into this world that Roy Marcus Cohn is born on the 20th of February. Roy arrives with advantages that many American children can only dream of. His father, Albert Cohn, is a successful lawyer whose career is steadily carrying him towards the upper ranks of New York's legal establishment. His mother, Dora, comes from a wealthy family with deep connections in banking and business. The family lives comfortably, surrounded by influential people and insulated from many of the hardships facing ordinary New Yorkers. From the moment Roy enters the world, he is growing up in an environment where power is treated as something natural. Judges, lawyers, and politicians are not distant public figures discussed in newspapers. They are people his family knows personally. They attend dinners, visit homes, and conduct business together. Roy learns at an early age that influence is not simply something possessed by others. It is something that can be acquired, protected, and used. Yet despite the family's wealth and status, Roy's childhood is far from straightforward. A childhood operation leaves a noticeable scar on his face. Although the surgery is intended to improve his appearance, it has the opposite effect. Friends and biographers later describe a man who appears confident and fearless in public, but who privately worries constantly about how others see him. The insecurity never entirely disappears. No relationship shapes Roy more than the one he has with his mother. Dora Cohn devotes herself to her only child with an intensity that borders on obsession. She monitors his grades, his clothes, his friendships, and even his social life. When Roy is sent away to summer camp, Dora rents a nearby house so she can remain close to him. Throughout his childhood, she is a constant presence, encouraging him, protecting him, and sometimes smothering him. The bond between mother and son becomes one of the defining relationships of Roy's life. As Roy grows older, the world around him changes dramatically. The stock market crashes in 1929. Banks fail, businesses close, millions of Americans lose their jobs. Across the country, families are forced to queue for food and search desperately for work. Even in prosperous households, anxiety begins to replace confidence. The economic collapse strikes particularly close to home for Roy. His extended family has built part of its fortune through banking, and one of his relatives, Bernie Marcus, becomes caught up in a financial scandal. Convicted of fraud, Marcus is sent to Sing Sing prison. Many children would find prison visits frightening. Roy finds them fascinating. As he walks through the gates of Sing Sing, he enters a world filled with armed guards, iron bars, and echoing corridors. The prison smells of disinfectant, damp concrete, and cigarette smoke. Conversations are conducted under the watchful eyes of correctional officers. Here, Roy witnesses something that leaves a lasting impression on him. Powerful people do not simply disappear when they are convicted. They continue to exercise influence. They continue to maintain relationships. They continue to matter. The lesson stays with him. As a student, Roy quickly develops a reputation for intelligence. He excels academically and demonstrates an extraordinary memory. He absorbs information rapidly and learns how to argue effectively. Teachers recognize his potential, and Roy increasingly sees the law as the path that will allow him to combine his intelligence with his growing fascination for power. While other young men dream of becoming athletes, soldiers, or businessmen, Roy is becoming attracted to courtrooms. He likes the structure. He likes the competition. Most of all, he likes the idea that a skilled lawyer can control events simply through words. By the mid-1940s, the Second World War has ended and America is entering a new era. Roy enrolls at Columbia University before continuing to Columbia Law School. There he throws himself into his studies, determined to move forward as quickly as possible. The pace is remarkable. While many law students are still settling into university life, Roy is already racing towards graduation. In 1947, at just 20 years old, he completes his law degree. He is too young to begin practicing immediately, but only briefly. Once he qualifies for the New York bar, he secures a position as an assistant United States attorney. He is barely old enough to drink. Yet he now holds a position that places him inside the machinery of federal justice. Outside his office, a new fear is beginning to grip America. Relations between the United States and the Soviet Union are deteriorating. Politicians, journalists, and intelligence officials warn that communist spies may already be operating inside the country. Newspapers carry stories of espionage, betrayal, and national security threats. For most young lawyers, it is a turbulent time to begin a career. For Roy Cohn, it is an opportunity. The ambitious young prosecutor is about to step into a case that will make him famous across America. And once he tastes national power, he will spend the rest of his life chasing it. The year is 1950, and fear is spreading across America. The Second World War is over, but a new conflict is taking shape. Newspapers are filled with stories about the Soviet Union. Politicians warn that communist agents may be operating inside the United States. Across Washington, careers are being ruined by accusations of disloyalty. The Cold War is beginning, and Americans are searching for enemies within their own borders. For a young prosecutor named Roy Cohn, the moment could not be more perfect. Still in his early 20s, Cohn is working as an assistant United States attorney in New York. He quickly develops a reputation for relentless preparation and aggressive courtroom tactics. Colleagues notice that he is not interested merely in winning cases. He wants attention. He wants influence. Most of all, he wants to be noticed by the powerful men who shape American politics. That opportunity arrives in spectacular fashion. In 1951, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg stand accused of passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. The allegations are explosive. Only a few years earlier, the United States had been the world's only nuclear power. Now the Soviet Union possesses its own atomic bomb, and many Americans believe espionage is responsible. The trial becomes one of the biggest stories in the country. Inside the courtroom, reporters fill the press benches. Outside, crowds gather to argue about guilt and innocence. Around the world, governments, journalists, and ordinary citizens follow every development. Roy Cohn is not the lead prosecutor, but he plays a crucial role in the government's case. One of the most important witnesses is David Greenglass, Ethel Rosenberg's brother. Under questioning, Greenglass provides testimony that directly links the Rosenbergs to the alleged spy network. His evidence becomes a central part of the prosecution's case. The jury convicts both Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. Then comes the most controversial decision of all. The judge sentences them to death. Years later, debate continues over the trial, the evidence, and the severity of the punishment. Critics argue that mistakes were made and that prosecutors overstepped their role. Defenders insist the Rosenbergs committed serious acts of espionage during a dangerous period of history. Roy Cohn never expresses regret. In fact, he spends much of the rest of his life boasting about his involvement. He even claims to have exercised influence behind the scenes that exceeded his official role in the courtroom. Whatever the truth, the trial transforms him overnight. At just 24 years old, Roy Cohn becomes nationally famous. His performance attracts the attention of one of the most controversial politicians in America, Senator Joseph McCarthy. McCarthy is leading a crusade against suspected communists in government, universities, and public life. He claims communist infiltration threatens the nation. His supporters see him as a patriot. His critics see him as a dangerous demagogue. To Roy Cohn, he represents opportunity. In 1953, McCarthy hires the young prosecutor as chief counsel to the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. Suddenly, Cohn finds himself at the center of political power in Washington. The hearings are intense. Witnesses sit beneath bright lights while television cameras record their testimony. Careers are destroyed by suspicion alone. Allegations spread rapidly. Names are published in newspapers. Fear becomes a political weapon. Cohn thrives in the environment. He is sharp, combative, and utterly fearless. Witnesses who appear before him often find themselves facing rapid-fire questions designed to expose contradictions and weaknesses. Friends admire his toughness. Enemies describe him as ruthless. During this period, Cohn and McCarthy also become involved in what later becomes known as the Lavender Scare. Alongside investigations into alleged communist activity, government employees suspected of being homosexual are targeted and removed from their positions. Thousands of lives are affected. The irony is striking. Rumours begin circulating about Cohn's own sexuality. Particular attention focuses on his close relationship with a wealthy young anti-communist named David Shine, whom Cohn brings onto McCarthy's staff. Neither man publicly acknowledges any romantic relationship, but speculation follows them everywhere. Then, the entire operation begins to unravel. In 1954, Shine is drafted into the United States Army. Cohn becomes determined to secure special treatment for his friend. Army officials resist. The dispute escalates into a public confrontation that explodes onto television screens across America. The Army-McCarthy hearings begin. For weeks, millions of Americans watch as the Army and McCarthy accuse one another of misconduct. The spectacle exposes the bullying tactics, personal vendettas, and political pressure that have been operating behind the scenes. The famous moment arrives when Army lawyer Joseph Welch finally turns on McCarthy. "Have you no sense of decency, sir?" The question hangs in the air. Public opinion begins to shift. McCarthy's power collapses. Before long, the Senate formally censures him. His political career never recovers. Roy Cohn sees the writing on the wall. The young man who helped build McCarthy's anti-communist machine resigns and returns to New York. He is only 27 years old. Already he has helped prosecute the most famous espionage case in America, advise one of the nation's most powerful senators, and become one of the best-known lawyers in the country. But his next chapter will make him even more influential. Away from public hearings and television cameras, Roy Cohn is about to build a network of politicians, celebrities, businessmen and criminals that will make him one of the most feared power brokers in New York City. When Roy Cohn returns to New York in 1954, many observers assume his best days are behind him. Joseph McCarthy's downfall has damaged everyone associated with him. The anti-communist crusader who once dominated headlines is now a political liability. For many ambitious young lawyers, such a connection would be difficult to escape. Roy Cohn has no intention of looking backwards. Instead, he reinvents himself. Over the next 3 decades, he transforms from a government prosecutor into something far more powerful and far more difficult to define. He becomes a fixer. In New York, a fixer is not simply a lawyer. A fixer is someone who knows judges, politicians, police officers, newspaper editors, union leaders, businessmen, and occasionally criminals. A fixer is someone who can make phone calls that other people cannot make, and few people possess a larger network than Roy Cohn. His office becomes a crossroads for power. The city's wealthy and influential pass through its doors. Business tycoons seek advice. Politicians ask for favours. Celebrities need protection from scandals. Mobsters require legal representation. Cohn rarely seems concerned by the reputation of his clients. To him, influence is influence. Whether a client wears a business suit, a police uniform, or carries a criminal record matters less than the power they possess. As the years pass, his client list becomes astonishing. He represents major businessmen, prominent politicians, Catholic Church figures, and some of New York's most notorious organized crime leaders. The boundaries separating legitimate business, politics, and the underworld often appear surprisingly thin, and Roy Cohn moves comfortably between all three worlds. His reputation grows accordingly. Friends describe him as fiercely loyal. If he decides someone belongs in his circle, he will defend them aggressively. His enemies offer a different description. They see a man who uses intimidation, gossip, threats, and political pressure as weapons. Both views contain elements of truth. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, federal prosecutors repeatedly target Cohn. He faces investigations, indictments, and accusations involving corruption, conspiracy, and misconduct. Yet somehow he survives. Again and again juries acquit him or charges collapse. Each victory strengthens his image. The perception grows that Roy Cohn is untouchable. By the late 1970s, he is one of the best connected men in New York City. The city itself is changing. Crime rates are rising. Financial crises threaten bankruptcy. Ambitious developers are reshaping Manhattan's skyline. New fortunes are being created, and Roy Cohn intends to be close to every one of them. Among the young men trying to make their mark is a brash real estate developer from Queens. His name is Donald Trump. The two meet in the early 1970s. Trump is ambitious, confident, and eager to build a name for himself in Manhattan. Cohn immediately recognizes something familiar. He sees a younger version of himself, aggressive, competitive, and hungry for attention. The relationship quickly develops. When the United States government accuses Trump's company of housing discrimination, Cohn becomes his lawyer. But he offers more than legal advice. He becomes a mentor. According to many accounts, Cohn teaches Trump a simple philosophy. Never admit defeat. Never apologize. Counterattack immediately. If someone accuses you of wrongdoing, attack the accuser. The lessons leave a lasting impression. Decades later, many observers will see echoes of Roy Cohn's tactics in Trump's own public style. Yet while Cohn is helping shape the future president of the United States, he is also building relationships at the highest levels of American politics. He maintains connections with conservatives across the country and becomes increasingly close to figures surrounding Ronald Reagan's rise to power. During Reagan's successful presidential campaign and subsequent administration, Cohn's network expands even further. His phone never seems to stop ringing. Political operatives seek guidance. Journalists seek information. Businessmen seek introductions. For Roy Cohn, influence itself has become a form of currency, yet beneath the image of confidence and power lies a contradiction that follows him throughout his life. Publicly, Cohn speaks against gay rights legislation. He supports campaigns that portray homosexuality as a threat to society. He dismisses activists fighting for equal treatment. Privately, rumours continue to circulate. Friends, associates, and enemies alike whisper about his relationships with younger men. Stories follow him. From Washington to New York, questions persist, but Cohn refuses to discuss them. His public response never changes. He denies everything. The denial becomes part of the persona. By the early 1980s, Roy Cohn appears to have achieved everything he ever wanted. He knows presidents. He advises billionaires. He socializes with celebrities. He represents powerful clients and feared criminals alike. The insecure boy from the Bronx has become one of the most connected men in America. But power has a way of creating enemies. And after spending a lifetime defeating investigations, lawsuits, and political opponents, Roy Cohn is about to face an adversary he cannot intimidate, outmaneuver, or destroy. His health is beginning to fail. and the carefully constructed world he has spent decades building is about to start collapsing around him. By the early 1980s, Roy Cohn appears to be at the height of his influence. His address book contains some of the most powerful names in America. He can call politicians, newspaper owners, celebrities and business leaders directly. Young Donald Trump still seeks his advice. Ronald Reagan is in the White House. The network Cohn has spent decades building seems stronger than ever, but behind closed doors, something is wrong. In 1984, Cohn receives devastating news. He has AIDS. At the time, the disease is poorly understood and deeply feared. Newspapers are filled with alarming headlines. Treatments are limited. For many patients, the diagnosis is effectively a death sentence. For Roy Cohn, the diagnosis presents another problem. It threatens the image he has spent a lifetime creating. For decades, he has cultivated a reputation for strength, toughness, and control. He has publicly opposed gay rights causes and repeatedly denied rumours about his own sexuality. Now he finds himself suffering from a disease that the public overwhelmingly associates with gay men. Cohn refuses to accept the label. As his health deteriorates, he insists that he is suffering from liver cancer. The explanation becomes his standard response. Friends hear it, journalists hear it, the public hears it. No matter how much speculation surrounds him, Roy Cohn refuses to acknowledge the truth, yet the evidence becomes increasingly difficult to hide. His appearance changes, his energy fades, hospital visits become more frequent. Behind the scenes, he begins receiving experimental treatments, including early anti-AIDS drugs that offer hope but no guarantee of survival. For perhaps the first time in his life, Roy Cohn finds himself fighting a battle that cannot be won through influence, intimidation or connections. At the very moment his health is failing, another crisis emerges. For years, critics have accused Cohn of bending ethical rules. Now legal authorities move against him with unprecedented force. Investigators focus on several allegations of professional misconduct, including accusations that he mishandled client funds and attempted to manipulate the estate of a dying client named Louis Rosensteel. The details are shocking. According to evidence presented during disciplinary proceedings, Cohn entered the hospital room of the unconscious and dying Rosensteel and attempted to secure changes to the man's will that would benefit himself. For a lawyer whose career has been built on aggressive tactics and personal loyalty, the accusations strike at the heart of his professional reputation. In June 1986, the verdict arrives. Roy Cohn is disbarred. After nearly 4 decades in the legal profession, he loses the license that has defined his entire adult life. The ruling is devastating. The law is not simply his occupation, it is his identity, his source of power, his weapon, and now it is gone. The timing could hardly be worse. His health is collapsing rapidly. The disease continues its relentless advance. Friends notice that the once energetic and combative lawyer is becoming increasingly frail. Yet even now, many remain loyal. Character witnesses had appeared on his behalf during the disciplinary proceedings. Powerful friends continue to visit and call. Among them is Donald Trump. Years earlier, Cohn had helped guide the young developer through legal battles and introduced him to influential figures across New York. The relationship endures until the end of Cohn's life. By the summer of 1986, however, there is little anyone can do. On August 2nd, Roy Cohn dies at a hospital in Bethesda, Maryland. He is 59 years old. The official cause is complications related to AIDS. Even in death, controversy follows him. The man who spent years attacking homosexuals has died from a disease strongly associated with the gay community. The lawyer who built a career around power has lost control over the story of his own life. His estate quickly unravels. The Internal Revenue Service moves to seize much of what remains of his property and assets. The vast network of influence he spent decades constructing begins to dissolve almost immediately. Yet Roy Cohn does not disappear from public memory. Historians continue to debate his role in the Rosenberg case and the McCarthy era. Political observers examine his influence on Donald Trump. Playwrights, filmmakers, and journalists return repeatedly to the contradictions that defined his life. Was he a brilliant lawyer, a political strategist, a ruthless opportunist, a victim of his own fears? Perhaps he was all of those things. One of the most memorable assessments appears on his panel of the AIDS memorial quilt. 3 words, 3 judgments, 3 possible versions of the same man: bully, coward, victim. For Roy Cohn, a man who spent his entire life shaping other people's stories, it is a final epitaph he never would have chosen for himself. And yet for many, it remains the most fitting summary of one of the most controversial figures in modern American history.